And so what is your central processing unit, your CPU, for your body? How do you take care of your CPU, right? So the CPU, it's your brain, right? So the most important part of your body, of your physical body, is actually your brain, because your brain controls everything. Just like in a computer is the most, in a computer, what controls a computer is the CPU. And so many of y'all have commented and messaged us about restorative longevity. I want this. How do I get this, right? How do I do this? I'm tired of living the life that I have right now. I've done the medications, I've done the supplements, I've done the surgery, and I'm still I'm getting older faster and I'm heading towards the grave faster. How do I stop that? Or even better, how do I reverse it, right? And that's what restorative longevity is. I did a podcast explaining what restorative longevity is, part 1. Go back to part 1, and so you can get the more definition. But the Cliff Notes version, the short version of definition of restorative longevity, is basically the ability to live a longer life, but a higher quality life. Okay, most people think, oh, I don't want to live a long life. I'd rather live in the moment so I can enjoy my life. Yes. What if you could enjoy your life for 100 years instead of 10 years, right? Because a lot of times the people that you hear that will say, man, I just want to enjoy my life. I want to eat whatever I want. I want to do whatever I want. I don't want to exercise. I don't want to care about rest. I want to go party. I want to do this. I want to go on vacations and stuff like that. You hear those people, right? Really, they may live till 80s or 90, maybe even 90s. Probably the chance of that is very low, but let's just say they live to their 70s and 80s. Out of their 80 years, probably only 5 to 10 years of them were quality. So you have to ask yourself, are you more focused on the 5 to 10 years of quality, or would you like 50 years of high quality life, right? That's what restorative longevity is. It's the ability to help your body restore itself so that you can continue to live a high quality life and be able to do the things that you love to do. Okay, so how do we do that? Today, we're going to start talking about it in this podcast. The first part, I'm going to go over, all right, give you the clue, it's CPU. Your CPU is one of the most important things you have to focus on when we're talking about restorative longevity. Because if you don't have a good CPU, it doesn't matter the rest of your organs. It doesn't matter, right? Your rest of the organs won't function. I like to call the CPU, or your brain, is your puppet master. You know when you see a puppet, I don't know if y'all are, for those of y'all who are a little older, like me, into their 50s and above, you know the puppet master, that they would control the puppets and the strings and stuff like that. Well, I like to say the brain, or our CPU, our brain, our CPU, is our puppet master. It controls all the other organs. It controls because it sends the messages down through these wires, which we call nervous system, the nerves, right? Each nerve is attached to every single organ, every single cell in our body, and it tells each cell in our body what to do. So if the puppet master is sick, guess what? It's going to tell the organs, all the cells, the wrong messages, right? So for those of y'all who have kids, when you get sick and you're all just short-tempered and you're just yelling at your kids, you send your kid the wrong messages, right? And so if you constantly do that, your kids are going to turn up to be the same, right? So coming back to CPU in a computer, actually, even those of y'all who are driving electric vehicles, it's all based off a little chip. That chip is the CPU, central processing unit. It tells all the other parts of the car what to do, how to do it, right? So same with our brain. Our brain is a puppet master, and our organs, our cells, are all puppets. So I'm going to go over a couple of things today that's going to talk about this CPU and debunk some myths that right now is in the media, especially here in the US. Unfortunately, the information is very censored in regards to medical. It's controlled by the pharmaceutical industry, and it's controlled by big food, and they don't allow information that, like Europe, all the rest of the world allows. The US doesn't allow it. And I'm not going to go into deep in that. So I'm doing my part to give you the information. Again, let me give you a disclaimer. I am not a physician, so I am not a medical doctor. Okay. I was not trained to prescribe medication. I was not trained to do surgery. That's what medical school is. They train to do medication and surgery. I'm not a physician, so don't listen to me for medication advice or surgery advice. Okay, that's not what I was trained in. I was trained in traditional Chinese medicine, and in addition to that, I was trained in how to restore. It's something that I coined, longevity, restorative in my clinic. I'm a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, nutritionist, and I created this restorative acupuncture. No one else is doing it. And so it's something that we do in our clinic at Achieve Integrative Health in Cedar Park, Texas. We're the only clinic in the world doing restorative acupuncture. So that's my background, just to let you know, that you know where I'm coming from. I'm all about helping you restore your body's ability to heal itself so that you can live a long, high quality life. So coming back to the brain, a couple of things that you may not know. The brain, right? The brain is, we are established, is the most important organ in your body. If you're going to help an organ, you help your brain first because it controls everything. I know I'm repeating this, but I want you to really understand that, right? There is no medication that can help your brain. There's no medication to make your brain smarter, make your brain heal faster, okay? Because the brain has this blood-brain barrier. It doesn't because it's so important. See, God created our bodies so miraculously and so intelligently. The brain is the only organ that it does not allow. It has something called the blood-brain barrier. It does not allow anything and everything to go into the brain. That's why it's called blood-brain barrier. It's very hard to get stuff into the brain, and especially medication, right? And definitely supplements. They don't go into the brain, right? Some people may tell you that. Supplement companies may tell you that. They don't go in the brain. There's a blood-brain barrier, right? So this is why it's so important to really focus on the health of your brain. So myth number one, your brain, or it's not necessarily a myth, but maybe it's information that you may not know. Your brain can't feel. You can't feel your brain. That's what I'm saying. Your brain doesn't have pain sensors, right? So when you go, let's say, like I play tennis, and I go play tennis a lot, and I hurt my wrist, and I feel the pain, right? Well, when you play football and your brain gets injured, those football players, they can't feel it. They cannot feel. When you get a traumatic brain injury, before you get diagnosed with a TBI, traumatic brain injury, your brain has already been damaged for a while. It wasn't because of that instance that it got damaged. It's been damaged for a while because the brain is really resilient. Because it's the most vital organ in our body, God created it to make it so resilient. It has its own barrier, protective. In the castles, they build a moat to protect the castle. The water around the castle to protect the castle. Your brain has that blood-brain barrier. It's a moat around your castle, right? It has a drawbridge. See, it doesn't allow anybody. It only allows certain people to go into the castle, right? It has its own reserve. It has this water in the well, right? It has its own reserve. So the brain can't feel. And this is the reason why. Have you ever seen that when surgeons are doing surgery on people's brain and the person's still awake? Because the brain can't feel. It doesn't have pain sensors, right? That's a good thing and a bad thing, right? Okay, next. Brain cells can't be replaced. Once you damage your brain cells, they cannot be replaced. This is why those traumatic sports, I love sports, and I know I'm going to get hate on this for this, especially here in Texas, where I grew up. I grew up Texan, and football, terrible for the brain. I love football, I love watching football, right? But it is a sport that is terrible for the brain. You look at all the players as they get into their 30s, when they start retiring in their 30s and 40s, if they go get an MRI of their brain, it's all jacked up. And of course, no one's going to tell you this. Only those, there's a group of NFL players that have severe brain injury. And I think this was like 30 years ago, they were suing the NFL. But it just shows you, it causes so many different, problems. Because think about it. If your brain controls everything in your body and your brain is damaged, right? You may just be thinking, oh, I may have headaches, I may not have memory problems. What you don't know, the brain controls everything. So can it also cause like liver problems, thyroid problems, gut problems? See, you don't think about that, right? And they don't talk about these things because it absolutely can. Because why? The brain controls everything. Okay, brain cells can't be replaced, and the brain can take a lot of punches. Here's, because it has its own reserves, it can take a lot of punches before it gets KO'd, before it gets knocked out, right? Number 3, meds can't stop the damage Alzheimer's caused to brain cells. So for those of y'all who are afraid, you have family history of Alzheimer's, right? Any type of brain issues, Alzheimer's, medication can't reverse it, reduce the damage of it. It might be able to slow it down. It might, right? It might. It's not guaranteed. It might, but it definitely cannot. And this is not from me. This is not from my advice in my studies. It's actually from the Alzheimer's Prevention Clinic at Weill Cornell Medical College and the New York Presbyterian Hospital. That's where this information is coming from. So they could center, the first center to focus on Alzheimer's prevention. Most centers, most hospitals, most research done right now, especially here in the US, I'm not sure about in Europe, they're all done about how to treat Alzheimer's. The problem is, based on, this medical school and hospital, when you're focusing on research to treat a disorder that you can't really affect, it's kind of like wasted money, right? Wasted time. No, very people are trying to prevent it from happening and doing research on how to prevent it. So number 2, brain cells can't be replaced. So once it's damaged, it can't be replaced. So yeah, you want to take your kids out of like hockey, football, because they're getting their brain cells damaged. And once it gets damaged, it can't be replaced. Number 3, meds can't stop the damage Alzheimer's caused to brain cells. Number 4, the clinical trials are very disappointing. So clinical trials, again, from this prevention clinic for Alzheimer's in medical school, they said clinical trials have yielded mostly disappointing results, confirming what everyone is loath to admit. That means people don't want to admit this. Scientists, physicians, they don't want to admit this. And this is what they don't want to admit. Treating a patient once clinical symptoms have emerged might very well be too late, right? Now, this scientist is talking about this is treating Alzheimer's. So again, this is not for me. This is for those of you who like clinical research and stuff, and you believe in that. This is what I'm getting it from. What the clinical trials, all of them, all clinical trials, right? It doesn't matter what trial, the result is once the patient, you have Alzheimer's symptoms, right? Once the clinics have emerged, it's too late. You can't do much for that patient for Alzheimer's. So what does that mean in layman's terms, right? For those of you who don't, may not understand. So once you damage your brain cells, that's it. You're not going to restore them, right? I know this is restorative longevity, but God built our body a certain way for a reason. And once you damage it, sometimes it's irreversible. So if you have a history of Alzheimer's disease and you start experiencing symptoms that the physician identifies, your doctor says, oh yeah, you might have Alzheimer's, right? From that point, that's the best your brain's ever going to get, right? Now, could you regain some of the memory? Yes, absolutely. How? Now, even though your brain cells are dead, the brain is miraculous. It can generate, this is called neuroplasticity, which basically means this is what it can create. It can create new highways, communication between brain cells. So let's say you have 5 brain cells that are so close together, right? If one dies, if this dies, right? This one dies, well, there's a big space in between here, right? Well, it used to be this brain cell had a pathway, had a nerve connected to it. And then this connected this. But now this brain cell is dead. But now the brain is still miraculous. It can generate a nerve. It can generate a new nerve to connect this to this, right? So you can reverse some of the symptoms, but you cannot replace that damaged nerve cells. And here's the thing. If you keep on ignoring and not doing the right things to reverse to those new nerve pathways, right? Your brain cells are going to keep dying. And this is from a neuroscientist that saying medications don't help that, right? So this is not for me. Again, next point that you may not know, less than 1%. So many people think genetics. Oh man, my had genetics, my parents had genetic issues with cholesterol, so I'm gonna get cholesterol. I'm due for cholesterol. No, you're not. What's the research say? Less than 1% of the population develops Alzheimer's because of a rare genetic mutation in their DNA. Less than 1%. Less than 1%. All medications, all billions of dollars the pharmaceutical companies focused on to research Alzheimer's is focused on the less than 1%. So if less than 1% is actually due to genetic mutation, what's the 99%? Here's the answer. So for the remaining 99% of us, the real risk is not determined by our genes. It is not determined by our genes. What is it determined by? It has more to do with how we live our lives. Most people don't want to hear that, right? See, the answer, the solution is actually very simple. It's very simple, but not easy, right? It's simple because we just have to change the way we live. And it doesn't matter if we have genetically parents who have Alzheimer's, we won't develop it if we change the way we live. But today, and I'm not here to blame the pharmaceutical company. They are just preying on, what we want. We want a shortcut. We want the easy fix. There is no easy fix. The easy fix causes a shorten of your lifespan, right? So, but again, this is not I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying for those people who want a longer term solution, longer term fix, that's what I'm talking about. If you want short term fix, hey, more power to you. This is not the podcast for you. And I'm not saying that you're wrong. That's not my place to judge. I'm not here to judge. I'm just here to give you information that you're not going to hear elsewhere. A pill is not going to solve your problems. A pill is not. The research shows it's 99% of us, it's how we live. It's not, it didn't say what type of supplement. I'm even talking about supplements. And I love supplements, right? But it doesn't say how, it doesn't take what supplement, what vitamin am I missing? It doesn't say that. It's how we live. Is diet super important? Yes, we'll go in that into future podcasts. But diet is not the only thing. The key thing, and I want you to focus here, is how we live. Diet is part of it. Exercise is part of it, right? And I want to go over the solutions, right, of how we're going to do that. One last thing that I want to go over before I talk about the solutions. It says, and even though I'm talking about Alzheimer's right now, I'm talking about the CPU, the brain, right? But they also found, it was estimated that 70% of all cases of stroke, 70% of strokes, 80% of all cardiovascular, 80% of all cardiovascular diseases, and 90% of type 2 diabetes. Okay, let me repeat those stats. It's super important. 70% of strokes, of all strokes that happen, 70% of them, 80% of all cardiovascular disease. Okay, this is any type of cardiovascular disease, blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke is actually tied to that. Any cardiovascular disease, right? Heart failure, heart disease, whatever, all those. 80% of those. And then 90% of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, right, were caused by nothing more than an unhealthy lifestyle. It didn't say, B vitamin deficiency. It didn't say vitamin C deficiency. It didn't say this because they didn't take this medication. It didn't say they didn't take the supplement. It said an unhealthy lifestyle, right? So in these podcasts, I'm going to go through all the things because many of the holistic practitioners, they focus on diet and exercise, which is crucial. I'm not saying that's not crucial. We'll go over that too. But diet and exercise is not all 100% of when they say an unhealthy lifestyle. Okay, so an unhealthy lifestyle is diet and exercise is just a part of it. So what are the solutions, right? You're like, hey, Jimmy, okay, now you got my attention. What are the solutions? So obviously a diet and exercise. Everybody knows diet, exercise, right? These are the two things that everybody knows. And there's so many weight loss diets, right? And we'll go over that if you want to know what is the best diet. I've actually done a podcast on that, but you can go watch that. What is the best diet for you, right? For restorative longevity, there is a best diet, right? And it's not what everything is being sold out there. I'm not going to name any names, but I haven't seen. There's only one that is the best diet if you want to have restorative longevity. Okay, but if you don't care about how long you live and the quality of life that you live, then you can do whatever diet you want. Diet, exercise. There's tons of exercise programs. What's the best exercise program, right? I just exercised this morning. What's the best exercise that you can do for restorative longevity? I'm going to go over that if you want to. Make sure you type in diet for restorative longevity, or if you're more focused on exercise for restorative longevity. Comment in below what solution you want me to talk about, okay? So diet is 1, 2, restorative longevity. 3, rest. You rest. I'm not just talking about sleeping, okay? Now, there's a lot of these wearables, Oura Ring, Whoop Band, that measure HRV, and they help, right? They help track. They don't help you fix it. They help track. Like the Oura Ring will tell you how well you sleep, and then they'll give you some diet, exercise, meditation tips to help. But some of that helps, some of it doesn't, right? So rest so important. So the third solution is rest. Rest is the only time your body heals. We're talking about our brain, right? So since our brain it's like its own resources, its own ecosystem, different from the body. Did you know, like our bodies, we have a sewer, a street, a cleaner. Like our body has a cleaning company that goes in and cleans the gutters, right? And so we have, like in a city that has a sewer system. The sewer system allows all of, when the rain and also the junk on the streets, it flows into the sewer system, right? And then from that sewer system, it gets channeled to a septic, like a reservoir, a place to hold all that toxins and stuff, right? Because we didn't have that. If you imagine like back in the 70s, probably earlier, probably the 1910s, just earlier, they didn't have, it was just all horse and buggy, right? They didn't have sewers, and the streets would get all muddy and people would throw trash, it gets all dirty. So the sewer system is vital to keeping the city clean. Same with our bodies. Our bodies have a sewer system. It's called the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is a sewer system. So we have street sweepers that come and sweep and clean. We have cleaners in our body. It cleans all our cells, our organs, and it gets all that junk and that toxins, the trash, and it dumps that trash into the sewer system, which is called the lymphatic system. That's part of our body. Okay, that's what happens in our body. When the lymphatic system gets plugged, toxins start to seep into the streets. So when the sewer systems, like floods, right? Like the Philippines recently had a big flood. Where else in the US had a big flood? When it floods and the water comes out of the sewers and into the streets and it floods the buildings, and then you see all that dirty toxin trash. That's what happens when your lymphatic system gets plugged up, overflows, and now that trash is actually going into your blood vessels. Yes, like your arteries that carry nutrition. Now trash is going to your arteries, right? And that's a whole nother topic, but I just want to explain that. So that's for the body. Your brain has its own sewer system. Yes, it's called the glymphatic system. The body's is called the lymphatic, Lymph, lymphatic system. The brain is the glymphatic system. The brain has its own street sweepers and cleaners and its own sewer system that is separate from the lymphatic system. It's connected, but it's separate. So when the body's sewer system overflows, it doesn't overflow into the brain. You see how great that our brain was created? It was so protected. God created it perfectly. So how does it have to do with rest? The only time our trash collectors come out and work, our street sweepers come out and clean, is when you're resting, especially your brain. So anytime that you wake up, your brain, you're like foggy brain, cloudy headed, you're not really clear, right? That is a clear indication that your street cleaners, your street sweepers, your dusters, your trash people in your brain did not come out. They did not empty the trash that night. Now, just because you sleep hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, if you still wake up cloudy brained, not focused, you're not like ready to go, right? That means your quality of sleep was terrible, right? And so we'll go over that, and how I use, if that's important, if you want me to go over that, rest and how you change your ability to rest to improve your body's ability to heal, right? To clean itself, and how I use an Aura ring and did it help me or not, right? We can talk about that. Type in the comments below, rest and restorative longevity, okay? So, but one thing about rest also, what's the importance of rest? It is the only time our body heals. It is the only time our body regenerates, cleans itself, regenerates, okay? So that's why it's important. So I just gave you 3. The 4th one is a broad category. It's called lifestyle habits. So like I just shared in the research, it's unhealthy lifestyle that causes all of our health problems, right? It's not, especially here in the US, it's not a lack of nutrition. The only reason why you have a lack of nutrition is because your health is a lifestyle. So that's what I'm saying. It's not because of lack of nutrition that we have all these chronic, degenerative, autoimmune diseases in the US. It's because of unhealthy lifestyle. Like I was reading this book and I forgot which book it was, but it said, did you know 50% of the world is starving? Like they don't have enough food. That is truly a lack of nutrition. They don't have food to eat, right? The other 15% is dying from obesity because we have too much to eat. And here's the interesting. You've got 50% of the world starving, 50% of the world overeating. They both have the same problem, okay? It's not the root cause. They both have the same problem. What's the problem? Nutrient deficient. We are both nutrient deficient. So people who don't have enough food, that makes sense, are nutrient deficient. But here in the Western cultures, like Europe, in the US, Australia, Canada, in the Western cultures, right? We have all the food in the world, but we're still nutrient deficient, right? So again, it has nothing to do with nutrient deficiency. It has to do with unhealthy lifestyle, okay? So I can unpack that, like what parts of that lifestyle, what parts do these centenarians, the people who live above 100 and have a better quality life than 40-year-olds, right? What did they do? What are they doing? Because they're still alive. What are they doing to live a high quality life? Okay, so we're gonna go over those. I know this is like an overview, but I needed to get the information about what the super important. Let me re-summarize before we end today. Your brain can't feel because it doesn't have pain sensors. That's why brain surgeons can do surgery on someone's brain and they can still be awake. So your brain cannot feel. It just cannot feel pain, okay? Number 2, brain cells cannot be replaced. Once you damage them, you're done, okay? Number 3, meds cannot stop the damage to your brain. Like Alzheimer's, this one is the study about Alzheimer's caused to brain cells. Okay, medication cannot stop the damage to brain cells. Number 4, the clinical trials are very disappointing in the sense of treating a patient once clinical symptoms have emerged might very well be too late. So by the time we start feeling symptoms, it's already too late. So then the question that we should be thinking is, how do we prevent it? And that's what I'll go into future podcasts, okay? Number 5, less than 1% Less than 1% of the population develops Alzheimer's because of rare genetic mutations. 99%, the real risk is not determined by our genes, it's determined by our lifestyle. And the last statistic, 70% of all stroke, 80% of cardiovascular disease, and 90% of type 2 diabetes are all caused by unhealthy lifestyle, not genetics. Okay, so I needed to give you that stats, and then the solutions we're going to go over in future podcasts. Thank you, Barbara, for typing in what you want, and I want you to type in what you want. So I'll talk about that first. But the solutions are, all right, we all know diet. This is for restorative longevity. Diet, exercise, rest, and lifestyle habits. These are 4 main solutions, right? Lifestyle habits is a broad category for other solutions. But for now, I'm going to keep them as 4 main solutions, right? So type in the comments below which one you want me to talk about first. I'm doing this podcast at least once a week, definitely here on Sundays, right? Sunday morning at 8:30. So let me know. All right, guys. If you are subscribed to our channel, subscribe. So that you'll get updated podcasts as I go through all of these solutions, right? I'm gonna give you the solutions, right? I got nothing to sell you. This is not like, hey, the solution. I know you've probably been on some podcasts and they're like, oh man, you gotta do, your brain lacks this nutrition. And they talk about all the reasons why, like they went over some of the statistics I went over, and they say, oh, your brain, and they end up saying your brain needs this specific nutrient. It's lacking this nutrient, that's why it's not healing. And the only way to get that nutrient is to buy my supplement. That's not what I'm going to tell you. I'm not here to sell supplements, okay? I'm here to change the world, give information that nobody else is wanting to give on how to restore. There's a lot of information about health and how to make your brain healthy, but none of it's about how do we prevent things from happening in the first place, right? How do we prevent it? And I'm not here also not to just give you information like all these statistics. That's why I gave it to you. But this is not a podcast just to give statistics and say, oh yeah, studies show that you are messed up. Your brain is dead. Okay, but what do I do about it? I'm going to give you those solutions, right? So, so just want to give you that. Until the next podcast, see you next week, Sundays, 8:30 Central Standard Time.